One, two. What's going on, guys? Bitwise guy here again, coming at you with a MVC mini-series. I don't know how big this will get, but it may actually get quite big, for the reason that I'm currently working as a MVC .NET professional developer, so my experience with MVC and an MVC framework that I've been requested to make videos on is quite extensive, and hopefully that's to the benefit of you guys. You guys can really learn something from me, and hopefully I can learn something from you guys. I have a few questions about some other topics that I'll ask at the end of this video, and I'm really hoping you guys can kind of point me in the right direction in the comments below. I'm currently studying some marketing, and if there's anyone who's really good at marketing who's kind of trying to transition into IT or whatever, I would really love your advice. Okay, but let's get started. So today's topic is from a request from a guy on IRC called hellyea. He's been having a little bit of trouble with his job, and he's working as a .NET developer. And I said to him when I get some time, I would make some Mvc ASP.NET tutorials, and so to keep my word, here they are. Alright, so first and foremost, what is MVC? MVC stands for Model View Controller, and Model View Controller frameworks are they're not language specific. They're actually the ideology is agnostic, meaning that it isn't for a specific kind of framework or a specific kind of language, if you will. So some examples of MVC frameworks that I know of and that I use every day are obviously C# for web, ASP.NET, MVC with Razor, Qt's Model View Controller framework, Django, Laravel, and there are many, many more. So first and foremost is, if you're an absolute beginner, this video you need to watch, otherwise you can skip ahead and go directly to the ASP MVC.NET tutorials. But if you've never really understood MVC, or you think you don't understand MVC, please stick around and watch this video because it will really help you understand what we're trying to achieve with MVC. Alright, so on screen you guys can see now, I'm going to do this a little bit like a lecture format, so maybe a little bit dry, but it's kind of the best way I know how to do these. So on screen you can see we've got our three components of MVC broken down. We've got the model, we've got the view, and we've got the controller. And I want you to carve into your hand the words model, view, and controller, and then I want you to, no, we won't go there, but, so we need to understand a fundamental principle, and probably the main and only overriding principle of MVC, in which you need to consider if you are designing an MVC implementation or if you are in fact using an MVC implementation, such as MVC C# for web. And that is this: separation of concerns. I'll say this 3 more times. Separation of concerns. Separate your concerns. Separation of concerns. Now, why is this so fundamentally important? It's because when we're working with a framework or an ideology or a programming idiom or whatever it is you're working with, ultimately you're working with that specific ideology to try and better solve a problem in which you have in programming. Now, the MVC the MVC ideology it solves the issue of this. Let's say your boss comes to you, or whoever comes to you, your client comes to you, and they say, I have a dream that I can build a website that takes in thousands of bits of different kinds of data, and I want you to be able to shuffle them around, I want you to process them, and I want you to be able to then show the person the results of those things, now or at a later date, right? But it doesn't matter when, as long as you're, you might not show it to them, but generally speaking, if you're using MVC, you will at some point. I need to be able to deal, the fundamental concept here is I need to be able to deal with lots and lots of data without getting lost in code, right? I need to separate all my bits of data out, and I need to keep them nice and organized, right? Now, for those of you who don't know what a model is, I'll explain what a model is, and you'll have to excuse me for my horrible ability to edit on screen. It just seems to lag a little bit, so yeah. Alright, so your task has been given to you, and it is this. there will be a store in which you're creating. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of this on the fly. There will be a store in which you're creating, and the store has products. So, sorry, product. It's not working. Why is it not working? Let's see. It's probably too big. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Products. Okay, so we need to think about this logically, right? So what is a product? Well, you might, if you've never done model view, if you've never done object-oriented programming, you may be very quick to jump on the bandwagon that a product is a skincare, or it's some deodorant or whatever else. Well, you would only be half right in saying that it's it's deodorant or it's whatever, right? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But if you were thinking along that track, you're thinking too specifically. Now, a product is simply something in which you can buy. It's a commodity, right? For all intents and purposes of what we care about, a product is a commodity. It is something that can be bought, and it is something that can be sold. So, if we have a product model, right, and the convention is normally to use, I've seen a few different conventions, m_products or whatever, but we'll use this one for now, just so it's nice and clear. So our product model might have two properties, right? So the first property that our product model might have is the base price, and it may have a it may have a base price. It may have an RRP price. Oops. Sorry, guys, you'll have to forgive me for this typing. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. But it'll have a base price, it'll have an RRP price, and it will have it may or may not have an in-stock property. It may have a bunch of different things, right? So what I'm trying to illustrate with this is that mProduct is simply a description of how a product is, of what a product actually is, at its the most basic level, right? So that's our first level of what we call abstraction, right? It's an abstraction away from the actual commodity in which we'll sell, right? So let's keep breaking this down. So let's create a new product here. Let's create a new model here. So just for the record, because of C#, I'm going to use the same syntax as C#, so when we get into the tutorials, we'll be more familiar with that. This in C#, in the context of classes, this means to inherit from. So I'm going to be using that. So let's say we have a I don't know, red lead pencil, which inherits from m_products. And I'll try and make this just a little bit bigger so it's all on the one line. Let me just quickly move this up here for you guys. Alright, so, cool. Alright, so a red lead pencil might have a property of lead color, and it might be equal to red. It might have a default of red, and there will still be our RRP_price, and it'll be in stock, and it will have a base price. So, and you guys can't see this, but I'll move it down in a second, just like this. Okay, so let me better explain this, because I don't explain things well while I'm typing. So basically we have mProduct. mProduct is kind of like, it just defines a product in our store. It doesn't define a specific product, but it simply defines the abstract concept of a product. Next we have a red lead pencil. And red lead pencil takes the properties from m_product, and it inherits from that, right? So not only does it have the not only does it have a lead color property, it also has RRP price, it also has in stock, and it also has a base price. Now, technically speaking, I've actually already broken separation of concerns here. The reason I've broken the separation of concerns here is because I've given the model a default thing. Now, I've seen many arguments about whether you're allowed to do this in MVC, and honestly, I think it's probably not the greatest thing to do for separation of concerns. But I don't have the time or the space to abstract this further. But generally what you would do in this situation is you would have M product, then you would have lead pencil, and then lead pencil would have a lead color, and then you would have a then you would have another model which says, like, you know, colored pencil or whatever else, and so on and so forth, and you keep abstracting it down to a very specific product. But let's move on. Okay, so we need to move on to something. Now, the weird thing about MVC that I really find is that even though it says model view controller, in reality, you never use it in that order, right? So it really goes model controller view, MCV. Now, why is that? Well, because we need to hold separation of concerns. So I need to explain to you separation of concerns really thoroughly. Separation of concerns means that the view can't do what the controller does, the controller doesn't do what the view does, and the model doesn't do what the view or the controller does. Now, this thing, the model right here, so this model here, this is just stupid, right? This is a stupid, dumb model. It's stupid. It doesn't know anything. It's simply just a data structure. It's just a definition. It just tells you how things work. You know, it doesn't even do that. Sorry, it just defines the product. It just defines the model itself, right? It's just a list of properties, like, you know, person has arms, person has legs, person has a stomach, so on and so forth, right? Next, we get to the controller. Now, the controller is basically this. Think of it as the slave master. If you're into that whole BDSM weird shit, the controller is the slave master. The controller basically pulls the whole show together, and the controller then sends that off to be displayed to the public, right? So what are some things that a controller can do? Well, a controller can instantiate an instance of a model, so it can instantiate models. It can return things to a view. It can do logic. It can decide. It basically makes decisions, right? It makes decisions and transports data around. Now, there is one more level to MVC that is not specifically defined in MVC. However, I will be hard pressed to find a framework or a usage of MVC or an MVC framework that doesn't also include one extra thing, and that is a data access layer. Now, the controller and the data access layer are not coupled. So the data access layer is completely separate. Now, an example of a data access layer might be Entity Framework for C#. And in fact, I don't really know any others. Or Idiom for PHP. There are a couple, but basically it's an object relational model, and you would use it with SQL to model to generate your models and to do data access. So, where are we? Because I've talked a lot, and I hate talking a lot. So, essentially, what we want to do, what we want to achieve is this. We want to take, and let me just get my little paintbrush here. So we want to take one of these, and it didn't let me circle. Alright, well, okay, we want to take one of these, right, and we want to make a new instance of it. So we want to say this. We want to say red lead pencil is equal to new So just some pseudocode here, just to kind of explain what I'm trying to do here. Now, we have a red lead pencil. Alright, now, in the controller, we are supposed to be doing this. Alright, so the controller essentially builds and sets up the data in the model. Now, in a practical term, it actually allocates memory for that model and does all that sort of stuff. Then what it does is this. Our view is simply a excuse me, I'm sorry. I normally talk better than this, but I'm just a little bit, carried off today, so I'm sorry for that. Basically, our view is kind of like this. It's our web page, right? So let's just draw a little shitty web page in here, and just like this. We got our little address bar up there, like that. And what we want to do is we want to say, all right, well, here we have a property. Sorry, we have a text box here. Yep, just like that. All right, doesn't matter. And we have a, I don't know, what do we have here? We have another text box. All right. So that's our view, right? Our view in this case is our web page. Now, this view will be strongly typed. This means that this view is expecting a model type of a red lead pencil, meaning it can access properties. It knows about the properties of a red lead pencil, right? Now, what we'll do is say, let's just say that this column right here, this one right here, this is for displaying a base price. So what we'll do is the controller will, sorry about that. The controller will return. You have to excuse my very weird looking arrow thing here. The controller will return a instance of the model to the view, just like this, right? So in C#, for example, we say return view and then the object that we're returning to the view, right? So we return this to the view, and all of a sudden the price. If we're saying that this is the price, this will be $4 in here. Should have been an artist. Definitely should have been an artist. There you go. Alright. So, as you can see, let's just go over this really quickly. Let's just recap so make sure you understand. And if you have any questions or comments or whatever, leave them in the description below, and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Basically, our controller creates an instance of the model, and the controller then returns that model to the view, and the controller does all of the logical processing and all that kind of stuff. Alright, I know this wasn't the best tutorial, but hopefully this kind of at least visually demonstrates what's going on here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next